It was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. My daughter's wedding, a beautiful celebration of love, commitment, and family. But little did I know, it would become a day that would haunt me forever. A day when everything I thought I knew about myself, my family, and my own boundaries would be tested beyond imagination. I was seated in the front row, watching as my daughter, radiant in her gown, walked down the aisle. Her fiancé, James, stood at the altar, his eyes filled with adoration and joy. I couldn't help but smile, though my heart ached at the thought of letting her go. She was my baby, my only child, and this day marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one where I would no longer be the center of her world. As the ceremony unfolded, everything seemed perfect. The vows were heartfelt, the setting idyllic. But there was something in the way James glanced at me. A flicker of something I couldn't quite place. I brushed it off, attributing it to nerves. After all, weddings were emotional events. The reception was a grand affair. The music played, the guests danced, and the air buzzed with laughter and excitement. I found myself seated at a table with close family friends, sipping champagne and reveling in the joy of the day. That's when James approached me. "Mrs. Reynolds," he said, his voice low and steady, "may I have a word?" I glanced at him, surprised. "Of course, James. Is everything all right?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yes, everything is fine. I just wanted to talk to you in private." A strange unease settled over me, but I followed him outside, away from the bustling crowd. We stood on the terrace, the night air cool against my skin. James hesitated, as if grappling with his words. "You look beautiful tonight," he said finally, his gaze intense. I laughed nervously. "Thank you, James, but shouldn't you be saying that to your bride?" He took a step closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I mean it. You're stunning. I've always thought so." My breath caught. This wasn't the light-hearted compliment of a son-in-law. There was an edge to his words, a weight that made my heart pound. "James," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," he said, his eyes locked onto mine, "that I've been drawn to you from the moment we met. And today, seeing you, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore." Shock rippled through me. This was my daughter's husband, her partner, her chosen one. And here he was, confessing something unthinkable. "James, this is inappropriate," I said firmly, though my voice trembled. "You're married, to my daughter. This isn't right." He reached for my hand, his touch sending a jolt through me. I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel. You're incredible, Mrs. Reynolds, and I think you feel it too." I yanked my hand away, anger flaring. "How dare you?" I hissed. "You have no right to say these things, not today, not ever." But even as I spoke, a part of me, a small, shameful part, felt flattered. To be desired, noticed, by someone so young, so confident. It was a dangerous feeling, one I buried immediately. "This conversation is over," I said, turning to leave. "Please," he called after me, desperation in his voice. "Don't tell her. Don't ruin this day for her. I made a mistake." I stopped, my mind racing. What should I do? Tell my daughter? Shatter her happiness? Or keep this to myself, protect her from the man she had just pledged her life to? The rest of the night passed in a blur. I avoided James, plastering a smile on my face for the sake of my daughter. But his words lingered, a dark cloud over an otherwise perfect day. In the days that followed, I grappled with my decision. Should I confront him again? Demand he come clean to my daughter? Or should I let it go, hope it was a fleeting lapse in judgment? But James didn't make it easy. He began finding excuses to visit me, to call, to linger when he knew my daughter wasn't around. Each time he'd apologize, promise to keep his feelings in check. But his actions said otherwise. The tension between us grew unbearable. I found myself dreading his presence, yet unable to avoid him completely. And then, one evening, everything came to a head. He showed up at my house unannounced. My daughter was out of town for work, and I was alone, enjoying a quiet evening. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, my heart sank. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. "I had to see you," he said, stepping inside before I could stop him. "I can't stop thinking about you." "James, this has to stop," I said, my voice firm. "You're married to my daughter. This, whatever you think this is, it's wrong." But he didn't listen. He stepped closer, his eyes burning with intensity. "I can't help it. I need you to know how I feel. Even if nothing ever happens, I need you to know." I backed away, my heart racing. "You need to leave. Now." He hesitated, as if weighing his options. Then, to my relief, he turned and walked out the door. I locked it behind him, my hands shaking. The next morning, I called my daughter. My voice trembled as I told her everything, about the terrace, the visits, the confession. I braced myself for her anger, her disbelief. But instead, there was silence. Finally, she spoke. "I knew something was off," she said, her voice breaking. "I just didn't want to see it." Together, we confronted James. His excuses, his apologies, meant nothing. My daughter filed for an annulment. Her dream wedding turned into a nightmare. And though the experience left scars, it also brought us closer. We found strength in each other, in our bond as mother and daughter. As for James, he disappeared from our lives. A chapter closed, a lesson learned. And while the memory of that day still lingers, I've made peace with it. Because in the end, love, true love, is about trust, respect, and boundaries. And those who cross them don't deserve a place in your heart.